All right, everyone, we'll get started. Good morning, everybody. You all ready to go? It's the first full day of our second annual convening. Did anybody else wake up at 3:30 or 4:30 in the morning last? Yeah, We're going to just start these in the middle of the night. But I have something that will make sure everybody is awake. I am about to introduce our first speaker. It is a real treat, and it's a personal pleasure for me to introduce Jim Shelton. And Jim is going to talk to us about, surprise, Opportunity Youth, but also Boys and Men of Color, his work, and also the innovation that's necessary for us to do the work that we're doing. And as we were thinking about this, I was actually thinking about the word innovation and the fact that it gets used all the time. We hear it all the time. You know, we need innovation to move our economy forward. We talk about social innovators. We talk about it a lot. And in some ways, the word almost has become devoid of meaning. We use it so much. And then I have to say, I cracked open Walter Isaacson's new book, and I'm not just flacking for Walter since we're here at the Aspen Institute, but I opened his new book, The Innovators, and he talks about that same theme at the beginning of his book. And he starts to focus on what real innovation is. How do you move from status quo to something that is that takes us to the next step, that is disruptive in nature, but also moves us to a better place. And he focuses on the kind of creative collaboration that's necessary in innovation. And I think that leads us to Jim Shelton. And Jim has had a remarkable kind of tri-sector athlete career. He has all the skills and credentials that those kinds of experiences would require. He has been at the New Schools Venture Fund. He was at McKinsey. He was at the Gates Foundation, and he's now our Deputy Secretary at the Department of Education. He understands all of the necessary elements for real innovation, and I can say, on a personal level, because I had the pleasure of working with Jim for several years, that he embodies that isn't just talk, that isn't just something that's on his resume, it is the walk that he walks. He thinks about what's required, the kind of disruption that's required to do the best work for our most vulnerable communities, to actually change those communities and move them forward in a positive way. And he does that in a wonderfully collaborative manner. And he's also a lot of fun to work with. And with that, I will bring Jim to the stage and have him talk to us about the work that he's been doing, about the work that we all care about, and about the kind of innovation that's necessary to move us forward. So, Jim.
Good morning. I know the coffee ran out. Is everybody all right? So last night, there were a bunch of Opportunity Youth who I had the opportunity to take a photo with. Where are you? Hold up. For real? They still getting breakfast? All right. So, I had my prepared remarks. I may talk up to them. I may use them. But as I was sitting there listening to Melody talk, and as I thought about the experiences that I've had here on the way, I want to start by telling you guys some stories. The first one, you'll have to indulge me because it's just my son, a conversation I'm having with my son. But I think it's emblematic of the work that we need to do. So my son has taken an interest recently in my work in a way that I had never seen before. With My Brother's Keeper, and he knew I worked in education. And one day he asked the question, why do we need a My Brother's Keeper? Why do you have to spend so much time working on schools? Why don't they all work for our kids? What is it that you are trying to do? And it's led to a whole series of conversations about this work. But one of the things that woke me up one day was we were having a conversation about how just doing the same thing for everyone in terms of school is not going to get them to where they need to go. And he walked away, and sometimes these conversations, anybody who's a parent knows, you start the conversation, you think you're about to make a great point, and they say, you want to go watch TV? And he came back later, and he said, I think I understand. He said, so if we were going to run a race, like poor people would be running with their feet, and middle-class people would have bicycles, and rich people would have had jetpacks. And we point to the finish line and we say, may the best man win. The acknowledgement by an 11-year-old of the world that we live in, that people who are born with the same innate talent and drive and desire and dreams are equipped very differently to achieve their dreams, to realize the opportunities in front of them. And that if we want it to play out differently than it's ever played out before, that we have to do something different. The fact that that is apparent and can be made obvious to an 11-year-old means that as a country, there is no reason for us not to remove our blinders, for us not to acknowledge, and I know I'm here with the choir, that something different has to happen to create the country that we say we want, where everyone has an equal opportunity for success. So I start in that place today because what you believe and what you are willing to acknowledge in terms of confronting the brutal facts of our current situation ultimately determines where we will be willing to go as a country. You are here because you recognize it and you believe it and you're committed to the work. But there's a whole lot of folks who are very comfortable with the world that way it is. And so I want to start today by saying that we cannot be quiet. We cannot be quiet and just do our work. The second point I want to make is that we are all here, but there were people in a room like this, not quite the same, not with the same organization, not with the same leadership, but with the same purpose decades ago. We are not the first people to care about inequity in this country. We are not the first to care about our youth who have been disenfranchised. We are not the first to try and create opportunity for those who need it most. We're not the first with brilliant ideas. We're not the first to be so committed that we work ourselves to the bone, as I know many of you are. Yet this challenge that we have persists. So the question for us is, what is going to be different this time? What makes us think that we are going to be successful? What makes us think that we're going to be the ones that are going to change things, that are going to make things better, that are going to give these youth who so deserve it their opportunity, their shot at the full American promise and dream? If we do what we've done before, the probability is we will not. Which brings me to the point that Melody raised about innovation. Before I was a deputy secretary, I had this role called running the Office of Innovation and Improvement at the Department of Education. And anytime you have innovation in your title, you have to come up with what definition of innovation you're going to use. I have a collection. And I decided that one for us, in education in particular, but the social sector in general, is particularly important. And that definition is process, product, strategy, blah, 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 that is significantly better than the status quo and goes to scale. If you have something that is significantly better than the status quo and it only serves a small population or a small percentage of the population that needs to be served, then you have a fantastic invention. But innovations change lives, lots of them. So our work here is about innovation. It's about taking the many great programs that you run the many great programs that you've seen, the many interventions that you've seen work, the strategies that you've seen employed across the country in many places in micro ways that have had tremendous impact and somehow not wound up spreading to the neighborhood next door, to the city down the road, to the state, to the country. Our work is to figure out how to do this, but not in our isolated circumstances, but in a way that the collective power of the people in this room, not only in your communities, transforms the way we think about this work and makes it impossible for people to deny that we can do this. Random bits of positive data are called anomalies. Collective bits of positive data are called trends. When you do your work, and you work together, and you scale it, we don't have to worry about what people believe, because at a certain point, the tide becomes inevitable. That is the power that is in your hands. But it won't happen by accident. Opportunity Youth is the right framing. It is about our young people who have tremendous assets. Our young people who can do anything if we provide the infrastructure, the systems, and supports that they need to be able to do it. We have tried this before in our isolated silos, program after program. Where you do your work now with discipline around collective impact, that is the difference maker. When you actually acknowledge the brutal facts of where you are in your data and are disciplined about how you work together and hold each other accountable and engage the youth in a conversation about what it is that they need and what they want and what they are willing to do, that is unfortunately different. Those differences will be transformative. And let me tell you one really important story to me. You don't know the ways in which the things that you are doing today will change the future. Saturday, I was at Morehouse and I was having breakfast before a technology and innovation summit they held on campus. And I wound up in line next to a student there. And we were having a conversation and he was saying how he wanted to go in education and I was trying to give him advice about it. And then shortly after I went up on stage to do my interview, and at the end he came up during the Q&A. And he said, you know, I introduced myself to you, but I did not know who you were, and you did not know who I am. He said, I am a young man who spent his senior year in high school living in a car. I didn't quite finish, and I didn't have a whole lot of hope. But I got picked up by a program, and that program was called Gateway to College. And for those of you who don't know, they are represented here among you today. And because of that, I am now a senior at Morehouse, and I'm going to dedicate my life to education. And I am going to make sure that no one has to follow the path that I did. The cascading effects of your work, the tide that you are beginning, will be transformative. It will change this country. It will change the world. Opportunity Youth are our opportunity for the future. Thank you.
So now we've got 10 minutes for Q&A with Jim. I say 10 minutes to start so you all aren't glaring at me when I say it's time is over. If you raise your hand, and I will come around with the mic, and we will, actually we've got a couple of mic runners. We'll come around with mics and take your questions. Just name and where you're from, and if you could give us your question for Jim.
And while the mics are coming around, I'll apologize. I'm not supposed to be a morning speaker.
That's not true. That was phenomenal. That was phenomenal. Thank you. All righty, got a question over here.
Hi, Jim. Paul Kine, the Deputy Superintendent of the School District of Philadelphia. And thank you for incredibly inspiring remarks so early. I guess the question I've got is, I really do feel inspired by your idea that what's different now is working with discipline collectively to scale. And I wonder where you think that's already happening.
So I think that there are, for good news for us, examples of where this has started to happen, both inside our sector and outside of it across the country. You know, the importance of starting local, this place-based work that you all are doing, where you start to build that infrastructure, is critically important, because this is new work. It's complicated work. It's really funny. When people talk to me about like the different programs, and oftentimes they think about I3 program, which is about scaling innovations. But I say the Promise Neighborhoods program is 10 times more interesting and harder than I3. Because if you think about it, inside every Promise Neighborhood is an I3 grant, at least 2 or 3, where you have taken a program that was working for some kids and tried to scale it to all the other kids that need it. So I think what we're seeing around the country is, whether it's through some of the collective impact work that Strive and others have led, where they've been able to bring together community, or whether you're looking at individual programs where they have been able to work across from city boundaries to across state boundaries, like some of the things you're seeing from communities and schools, or whether it is through some of the workforce development programs that we now know are jumping from state to state because of the work that's starting to happen between the boundaries breaking down between workforce development and juvenile justice. I think we're seeing these examples of how being really disciplined about the work, being really, ruthless, frankly, when it comes to saying what we're going to invest resources in and what we're not going to invest resources in. And then, most importantly, putting our egos to the side so that we can be focused on our youth and not upon our programs and ourselves. We're seeing things happen.
Next question.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Luis Negron from Atlanta, on United Way Greater Atlanta, and a fellow Morehouse alum. Jim, I'd like to say if you could help speak on the perspective you have on the Boys and Men of Color initiative, with the context of your experience of being a Morehouse man and how that has influenced your decision and how you see this guiding in the educational aspect.
Yeah. So the work of My Brother's Keeper is just a manifestation of the work of Opportunity Youth. The interesting thing is, I mean, you remember how My Brother's Keeper got started. People think it got started in February when the president had this launch. It got started literally the second after he walked out of the press room after the remarks he made after the Zimmerman verdict. And he came out of that press room and he looked at some people and he said, do not make those words hollow. We have to show our young men that we are willing to invest in them and that we care about them, just like we need to do with all of our youth, but especially our Opportunity Youth. The work then has taken off in a couple of different regards. And if you really take a look at the report, you might say that there are a few crib notes that I lifted from some things that many of you have done. The emphasis on the use of data and evidence, the emphasis on the creative career, college and career pathway, the emphasis on the use of evidence-based practice, all of that is embedded in there. The reason that way that my Morehouse experience plays into it is that one of the things that I learned at Morehouse, so just a little bit about my background. I grew up in Southeast DC, but I went to a private school called Gonzaga. And so I always had this dichotomy in my life, right? I go to my prep school, I go back to my neighborhood, I got on my prep school clothes, and everything that goes with that when you go back into your neighborhood. And then I went to Morehouse, and I was around a bunch of brothers who wanted the same things, had many of the same opportunities that I had, and who were clearly moving in the same direction. And what it did for me was two things. The first was ironic, was it reminded me of how much I loved and how much I respected my friends from my old neighborhood. because there was not one of them that I was smarter than. They made me, they took care of me every single day. But the opportunity was different. And I imagine what it would be like if I could have created that opportunity for all the boys in my neighborhood. That experience is an overarching theme that cuts through My Brother's Keeper and frankly all this work. The second thing that it did for me was teach me to think about bigger things, not to be settled with incremental progress. And for those who don't know the legacy of Morehouse, it has a long legacy of people who drove movements. And they drill into you that that is your responsibility. And so I'm glad to see you here, and I'm glad to be here as a part of this movement. I don't know if I can do any more.
Okay. Well, I'm Phil Leaf from Baltimore, Johns Hopkins, and one is you're a great morning speaker, both inspirational but also in terms of content.
Thank you.
I just want to thank you for that. One of the big silos, two of the big silos that we have is we have some great work going on within local school systems to retain men, boys of color.
Yeah.
We also have a lot of work going on outside of school systems. Often, once a student stops coming, either by local law, the local school systems literally are not allowed to be working with that young person anymore, or there's just a lot of historical reasons. You mentioned promised neighborhoods. I think most people in many of our communities, even in our state departments of education, local school systems, do not know that promised neighborhoods is a Department of Education initiative. Are there things that we could be doing locally to be building on this integration that you and the federal government and people here have already done to help get this information across, that these barriers can be broken positively because there really are assets in both groups, and that working together will be helpful versus this is not education, it's off my bailiwick.
So there's a lot in there. I think I want to start with accepting at least the one side of the coin that is the compliment in the fact that people don't realize that Promised Neighborhoods is a Department of Education program, right? Which is that, you know, as the president, even when he was a candidate, said, these challenges are integrated. They have to be brought together. And that's been our theory of action, frankly, since the very beginning, since Melody was building out our domestic policy framework. And the notion is that we have to figure out how to do this work at every level of the system. Right now, what we have is the federal part trying to do it, and local community-based organizations, and in some cases, the public institutions there are trying to do it, and then a big gap in the middle in most places that make it really hard to get any of it done. So what we're trying to encourage is three things. The first is we're going to keep providing incentives from the federal level for people to try and figure out how this integration works and to make it such that it's very apparent that this is how we expect work to be done. And to reward folks through promised neighborhoods, choice neighborhoods, promised zones, take your pick, for people who articulate a vision that is about the integration of these things and how they come together to produce a different and better outcome than individual silo programs. The second thing is that we're trying to build the capacity of not only folks in the field to do this work, but the folks who support the people in the field, so we can spread more quickly the tools and resources that you're developing as you struggle through the hardest parts of this, whether it's how you deal with the FERPA issues of sharing data, or the HIPAA issues, or COPPA issues, or take your PA issues that you want, or actual hardcore systems, or the strategies that are working in different places while we try and build an evidence base about what actually works. That infrastructure is still nascent. We're not great at it. Like, I say these things like, yeah, we need to take these best ideas and scale them. We don't do that well. It's going to take us time to figure out how to do it, but that's the direction we're trying to go. The more you practice it locally, the easier it'll get for us to do it nationally. And then the last thing is that we're trying to create incentive structures at the state level. And this is neither a red nor blue issue, because there are huge efficiency opportunities, as everyone in this room knows, in figuring out how you actually do collective work better, and intervening earlier, and stemming all the things that we get excited when we talk about them, and as well we should, at the tragic endings of boys' lives or young people's lives. But we know those are all symptomatic of things that are happen much earlier. And so I hope that answers some of your question at least. This integration work is the hardest work we'll do, flat out. Doing integrated work that actually moves the needle is the most important work we'll do. Thanks, everybody.
Before we go on, I do want to take a moment, a personal privilege, to say thank you to Jim again. And it's not just for his remarks this morning. It is for all he has done with this administration. And I think many of you know that Jim is soon going to be stepping down as the Deputy Secretary at the department. And I remember when I got a message from him letting me know about that, I had this mixture of emotions. You know, one was sadness for the administration, but the other one was excitement for him. I know what that feels like. And the understanding that this is the end of a particular chapter in your journey and all the amazing work that you do, but it is also the beginning of a next chapter. And I think for everything that you all heard this morning, you know that that is going to be simply spectacular. So I want to thank you for your service, thank you for all you do, and thank you for doing it so incredibly well and with such passion. Thank you, Jim. So I think you would agree that we are off to a phenomenal start with those opening remarks, but it isn't just a phenomenal start for this morning. I think we are off to a great start for all the work that's happened over the course of the past 1 year plus. And you think about it, we've got 21 communities represented in this room, and all of the members of the collaborative that represent those communities. We have new partners in this room. We are starting to build out pathways. We have policy wins under our belts in various communities in various states. Our evaluation work is moving forward and off the ground. As Jim was saying, we want to create trends. We want to create a sense of inevitability around what we're doing. And we are doing that in a way that's building a movement and creating momentum so that it's not just those of us who sit in this room and our friends and our allies back in states and back in our communities, but ultimately for the entire country to realize that we have a way forward, that we are in fact making progress. So with the work of the next couple of days, I say, let's take it to the next level. Let's keep on pushing. We have a lot that we're going to learn from one another, a lot that we'll share with one another, and I think that will allow us to go back to our communities armed with more information, with more tools to do our work and to take it to that next level. So to get us off with our next part of our program and get us up and running, I want to introduce two of my colleagues from the Aspen Institute. And I have to say, these are two people who are not only experts in what they do, but they are two of the best people that I think I will ever know. I love working with them, and I know many of you do as well. I want to invite Steve Patrick, the Executive Director, and Monique Miles, the Deputy Director of the Aspen Forum for Community Solutions.
It's getting emotional already. Do I get to start, Monique? Yeah. First lesson, always do what Monique tells you to do, and when in doubt, ask Melody. And I just said to Mel, it's getting emotional already, and I heard it in Jim's voice when he was talking about his neighborhood friends. So forgive me if I get a little emotional too, because you are the ones we've been waiting for, right? All right, wait a minute, that was my welcome from last year. So I gotta flip the script a little bit, but it's true, and you heard me say that last year. So welcome to Aspen. We're really excited about the next couple of days. We're really excited about the work that so many of you are doing on the ground. We're really excited about the national innovators. You know, Jim referenced Gateway to College as one of many that are in this room, and how we mash up together over the next couple of days is gonna be super fun. Thank you, Monique and Team Aspen, for pulling this together. It's been incredible to watch you pull this together. You know, my job is you get pigeonholed, right? So if Jim is the innovation dude, then I guess my aspiration is to be the leverage guy. And many of you know that I am a self-professed leverageaholic. And much of what this meeting is about is how do we connect the dots and leverage to get to what Jim was talking a little bit about, which is how do we get from some to many to most young people in the opportunity youth space having access to opportunity? And what does that look like in our communities? And so Jim also referenced kind of living in a dichotomy and thinking in dichotomies sometimes. And I think that's one of the reinforcing themes that we have to carry with us in this work, which is, yes, we are building out a pathway, and maybe 2, maybe 3. We're thinking about what really works effectively in this space, and we're also looking at the whole population and thinking about how we're going to get to scale in community. And that's a tough one to carry. So part of what I also wanted to say in my welcome is I wanted to apologize for the unfair expectations that we have, in particular of the 21 communities. But I also wanted to say they're not going away. And at least we're willing to recognize they're unfair, right? We expect you all in the community to really be working at the most innovative, cutting-edge level to really connect young people to opportunity, really connect young people to the local labor market, map back from where the jobs are, do youth development, which is actually human development, and you're in the business of human development, and there's no more important business out there. Yes, Jamil? We're asking you to do all of those things, and by the way, how do you connect every system that's trying to either serve or creating barriers for opportunity youth? And by the way, where is the private sector in this conversation? And by the way, where are the employers? And by the way, so I apologize for the unfair expectations. I really appreciate that you've all already adopted them for yourselves already, but I want to acknowledge them. And then I mentioned that last year as part of the kickoff, I said, you are the ones we've been waiting for. And then you'll remember at the closing, I was really excited that I actually had meant what I said at the beginning, because I don't trust myself. So at the end, I was like, wow, you really are the ones we've been waiting for. So I don't want that to be a throwaway line. I want to tell you just a little bit about why this room matters so much to the future of so many young people in our country, and why you are the ones we've been waiting for. And part of it is that you are able to carry that relentless pursuit of pathways that work theme in everything you do while you look at the big picture. And a lot of folks can't do that. Another is that you understand that collective impact is a long-term thing. I think the language may actually have gotten beyond buzz. It's been co-opted in a few places, and a lot of people just say, hey, let's get together and call ourselves collective impact, and we might get a grant. But I think this community of communities understands that collective impact is a 10-year, 20-year horizon, that you're in it for the long haul. Yes, we're going to have an evaluation in 5 years that says you rocked. But this is a long-term thing. Everybody I know in this room knows that. There is no sort of short-term panacea, what did we do for the young people 1 year from now crowd here. You are the ones we've been waiting for. The other thing that I see in this room, both in the national organizations who have been invited to join us, and we're so excited about their presence, and we want the local communities to grab them and leverage the solution set that they represent in terms of pathways. And there's a ton of them here, from Gateway to National Guard Challenge to Youth Build to Year Up to, if I didn't name you, you're here because you're best in class. And we want to make that connection. But those national folks stand side by side with you all who are from the communities that we support with the Opportunity Youth Incentive Fund around some key things. One is equity and justice. This group is about equity, fairness, access to opportunity. It's about social justice. You all are about social justice. You care about economic justice. You care about what could be best for our country, and you're moving towards achieving that. And that's powerful. And last year, you remember we did a plenary, for those of you who were here, on racial equity. And we put a stake in the ground around that. And you all, that is my edgy moments, but we get that. We understand the barriers that exist. We understand some folks got jetpacks and others are riding tricycles and some are, walking with a limp. And that's a stake in the ground that we collectively share. And it's been amazing since that plenary, the kind of conversations we've had. So in the future, you'll see Aspen, you'll see the Collective Impact Forum continuing to go deeper on the equity and justice lens and not ignoring the issues of race that we still have to overcome in our country. What's amazing is that I see that in the work that's happening in all of your communities every day, and it's really inspiring. So, you are the ones we've been waiting for. We can't wait for the next 2 days. We're really excited about the momentum of this moment. We're really excited about what's happening at the national level. The unfair expectations we have are real. I thank you for keeping them and carrying them on your own selves. The moment we're in around leverage is unbelievable. So, everything from my brother's keeper to the P3 to the, no, I don't mean the P3. I mean sorry? I3? No, I meant the P3. The P3. Sorry, morning ain't my thing either, Jim. The performance pilot partnerships, that's 3 Ps. The momentum around the new Social Innovation Fund grant we got, there's just so much momentum in the field, and that's part of the unfair expectations. You all are like, where do we start? How do we even, hello, this work is super hard. What Jim said is right. It's the integration, the connection, the collective impact work is the hardest work you'll do. So those unfair expectations are, the good news is we have an abundance of riches right now in this movement, and we got to grab those jewels, man. We gotta grab those riches, and we got to leverage the heck out of it. And you are the ones we've been waiting for. But in the end, and this is why I'm so excited about the people in this room, you're not accountable to Aspen or to our funders or, to the incredible leadership council that met yesterday and is super excited about all this work. Really, it's not about you are the ones we've been waiting for. It's about you are the ones the young people have been waiting for, and you're accountable to them. And that's the spirit in which most all of you, pretty much everybody I can see in this room, that's the spirit in which you do this work. So you are the ones they've been waiting for. You are the ones who are standing with them hand in hand doing this work, lifting up their voices, connecting dots in the community with, by, and for them. And that's what it's all about. I mean, at the end of the day, the young people in our country, the young people in your communities, the young people your national networks work with, that's what it's about for you. That's who you hold yourselves accountable. That's why we get to have the unfair expectations we have, because you are the ones they've been waiting for, and that is inspirational. So, welcome. Thank you for being here. Enjoy your time. I'm at 0 minutes, and I can't wait for what's going to come out of the next couple of days. Thank you.
Thank you, Melody. Thank you, Jim. And thank you, Steve. As Melody shared earlier, I'm Monique Miles, and I'm the Deputy Director of the Aspen Forum for Community Solutions. And I have to say, I am so excited to be here with all of you today. It's difficult to believe that just shy of a year ago, We welcomed so many of you here to Aspen, Colorado for the Fall Opportunity Youth Incentive Fund convening. And now here we are, again, not even a full year later, and I'm excited to say for those of you who are joining us for the second time, welcome back to Aspen, Colorado. And for those of you who have joined us for the very first time, we are so delighted and appreciative that you are here with us, and we look forward to the learning we're all going to do together for the next 36 hours or so. So I have been tasked with providing you an overview of our time together. However, before doing so, I want to acknowledge the incredible work that has gone into making this convening a valuable experience for all of you. I'd like to begin by thanking our youth and our session facilitators for designing relevant and rich content that will be shared over the next day and a half of our concurrent sessions. I'd also like to thank all of the organizations that work at the national level to move this Opportunity Youth agenda. Thank you so much for being here with us. We look forward to you sharing your Opportunity Youth Reconnection strategies, your lessons learned, and the successes you've experienced to date with all of our grantees. But more on these national organizations later. The Aspen Forum for Community Solutions is fortunate to work with a number of partners across the country, many of which are with us today, including OMG, the Center for Collaborative Learning. And I'd like to say thank you to Meg Long, Justin Piff, and Kim Edmonds for being here with us. I'd also like to acknowledge FSG, our technical assistance partner who supports us with the collective impact approach. To the remarks earlier, we know that this is one of the most difficult tasks we've asked our communities to endeavor. And so, Faye, we not only appreciate you being here with us, we also appreciate the very thoughtful content you've put together and your ongoing support of the learning goals of our communities. I'd also like to acknowledge Jobs for the Future, our implementation partner with the Opportunity Youth Incentive Fund. Thank you, Adria Steinberg. Thank you, Mamadou Njai. Thank you, Terry Grobe. And especially, thank you, Lily Allen, for your partnership and commitment to our collective goals. I'd also like to acknowledge Chris Kingsley, and thank you so much for your leadership with our data efforts. Finally, I have to acknowledge the team at the Aspen Forum for Community Solutions. Thank you, Melody, and thank you, Steve, for your leadership. And I'd like to especially acknowledge and thank Elaine and Nimoy for your tireless commitment to young people, for your commitment to quality, and also learning that will make this convening have the impact it's intended to achieve. Thank you for your hard work. So I'm now going to pivot to share more of the insights regarding our time together for the next 36 hours. And before I walk through the highlights of the program guide, I wanted to quickly share some learning themes that really guided the development of our convening agenda. These learning themes are intended to build on the early stage efforts we know so many of you are at in regard to being implementation grantees. And we were keen on these particular learning themes because we know that they will support the sequencing of your pathway development strategy for the years to come. So to begin, we know that Opportunity Youth are the young people who fall through the cracks of the systems that are intended to serve them. And because Opportunity Youth disconnect at so many points along the pathway, it's imperative that multiple stakeholders work collaboratively across systems to support the successful reconnection to secondary, post-secondary, and employment. Given the multiple stakeholders that we have with us today, for example, we have mayors, assistant superintendents, leaders in the foster care and juvenile justice systems, leaders in the secondary and post-secondary system, and of course, young people themselves. We have designed a learning agenda that is as broad and complex as the systems each of you serve daily. And our guiding principle is that no single system is responsible for Opportunity Youth. And so we've designed a convening agenda that seeks to support learning across the collaborative to deepen our collective ownership for reconnecting this population. Also, we are keen that in order to build on the national movement to reconnect Opportunity Youth, that there must be intentional sharing of national evidence-based strategies that inform our local efforts. This learning agenda for the convening seeks to build on the momentum from national efforts around Opportunity Youth, while also lifting up and honoring the extraordinary work that's happening on the ground in communities across the country. We know that advancing the movement is contingent upon the careful connecting, blending, and braiding of local and regional strategies that are both informed by and roll up and aggregate to the national level to reconnect the 6.7 million opportunity youth across our country. Additionally, the Opportunity Youth Incentive Fund is committed to civic engagement. This is evidenced through the engagement of youth leaders who are part of the collaboratives at the local level and also across the portfolio at the national level as well. They are part of the Youth Leadership Group we officially launched at this convening and also part of our Leadership Council. We honor youth voice and perspective, and we see young people as the true designers of this work. And even more importantly, we know that young people are the sustainers of this work, and they will move this movement forward for the years and the decades to come. And thanks to the committed efforts of Jamil Alexander, Shanice Jackson, and many other young people, the youth track at this convening is the richest and most robust it has been to date. Finally, we know that based on your feedback, or actually I should say, based on your feedback. So the message here is that we have listened to you and we have heard you and we have tried to really embed this in the most recent design of our convening agenda. We know that learning happens best and has the most meaning and impact when it happens in tandem with your peers. And we also know, once again, that there's extraordinary work happening on the ground in communities across the country. These efforts range from the strategic engagement of local employers to building an advocacy agenda that enables foster care youth to maintain support through the completion of a post-secondary credential up to the age of 26, to name a few. The agenda for this convening seeks to lift up these really important lessons and many others, and a peer learning community designed to bolster connections that will endure for the days, months, and years to come as we collectively endeavor to reconnect our young people. So with these learning themes in mind as the fulcrum of the fall learning agenda, I'd like to quickly highlight a few additions to this year's movement building convening. So as mentioned earlier, the youth leadership track is the most robust it's been to date, and it's worth noting that in addition to having sessions that are youth only, we've also taken care to design sessions that garner youth input and highlight the ways in which youth and adults can continue to work in partnership to move this national agenda. Also, with an eye on learning at the national level, we are just so delighted that we have so many national exemplary, as Steve said, best-in-class models with us here for an event that we have titled Engaging with Employers. We are delighted that the Grads of Life campaign was able to join this event at the last minute, and we hope that this event will enable so many of our communities across the country to connect with pathway models, and these pathway models will continue to inform your strategic implementation agenda for the years to come. It's also worth noting that we will be serving wine and cheese at this event. So we do hope that you will stop by for 5 minutes or stay for the entire time. But either way, we really do look forward to seeing you at this event later today. And we particularly hope that connecting with these national models will prove valuable to your work for the years to come. Now, on a related note, we are very excited to introduce the Learning Wall to you this year. So if you look to the back of the room on the right-hand side, you will note that we have our Learning Wall. So this wall is intentionally divided into 2 parts. To the left side of the wall, we have what we have identified as learning questions. These are intended to capture ongoing ideas and dialogue that may not require an immediate response or discussion. These topics may become part of the content we explore collectively during our spring convening or possibly even over a webinar. But to the right of the learning wall are the discussion topics for the open space session. So we added the open space session to the agenda based on your feedback from past convenings. This session requires that you identify any topic of interest you would like to discuss further after a concurrent session, or identify topics that have not been explored during this convening but are pertinent to your efforts. And then you may lead a facilitated discussion with your peers. We ask that each of you monitor the learning wall throughout the day and identify any discussions that you would like to be a part of. I'm also very excited to share once again, based on your feedback from past convenings, we have included a networking session to the agenda this year. This time is completely yours. Please use it as you please. And we encourage you to invite members from other communities to join you for any discussions or content that is top of mind for you. The final piece I'll share that we're so excited about is that we have social media this year. So right outside this room, we've set up a space where you can go, you can tweet, you can post on Facebook, you can share some core messages from the learning convening. The hashtag is OYIF, and we actually have little cheat sheet cards at your table for anyone who's interested in learning some more information about using social media at this year's convening. We hope that you will tweet about the experiences you're having with us. So it is our hope that the programmatic highlights, coupled with the concurrent sessions and plenary sessions, will be valuable to each of you and will inform your collaborative efforts in many ways. We look forward to receiving your ongoing feedback, both formally and informally, and we also look forward to the time we're all going to have together for the next 36 hours. Finally, in closing, I'd like to share a quote from one of my all-time favorite authors, James Baldwin. When asked about the impact of poverty, he responded by saying, "Anyone who has ever struggled with poverty knows how extremely expensive it is to be poor." I have often been asked, why do you work so hard? And when I am asked this question, it's James Baldwin's words that run through my heart and my mind. See, I know firsthand what poverty costs. I was born in Harlem, New York, to a young mom who worked tirelessly to ensure that my siblings and I would be afforded a good education. And despite all of her hard work, I know that even today, that was not enough for all of my siblings because the costs of poverty are psychological, emotional, social, and structural, just to name a few. See, poverty, very similar to wealth, it aggregates over time. It's passed down oftentimes from generation to generation. So it's exciting to be here with each of you again this year to reflect and celebrate on the progress from last year and deepen our collective efforts in the years to come. And I personally feel so honored to do this work with each of you because I know that my commitment to reconnecting youth, to reducing poverty, to advancing the lives of children, is not only shared with everyone in this room, but also drives our collective commitment to achieving such critical endeavors. And when I say thank you for your work, when I say thank you for the progress that you all have made in your local communities over the past year, it is in solidarity to our shared commitment to reduce the cost of poverty for all of our children. Thank you. All right. So I'm going to transition us quickly. You know, we are so excited again to be here, and what we know is that, again, you're going to do the most learning with each other. So we wanted to make sure that we use this time together this morning to provide you with the opportunity to get to know each other better. I'm going to tell you up front that we only have 15 minutes to move through this networking activity, but I know collectively we can do that. So what I need you all to do now is stand, right? And I probably should have given you all the directions first before I ask you to stand. You need to find someone that you do not know, who you have not met, and I need you to identify them as your partner, and then I will share the next instructions. All right. If I can have your attention at the front of the room. If you don't have a partner, raise your hand. All right, Shanice, I see you. Here, come up to the front. I see some people over here that are still looking for a partner. I see someone in the back. Anybody else still looking for a partner? Raise your hand. All right, come up here to the front if you are partnerless. Anyone who's partnerless, just move up to, okay. All right. There you go. There's your. Oh. You know, you can also become a tripod if you need to, if you can't find a partner. All right. So I need everyone quiet so I can walk through the next set of instructions. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it. I hear the room quieting down. All right. So you each have exactly 1 minute to walk through the following questions together. So we do need you to start by sharing your name, your community, and your role. And then the question we'd like for you to each take turns answering is, what is the one most exciting thing about the Reconnecting Opportunity Youth work in your community? You have 2 minutes. What'd you say? Oh. Huh? Oh, yeah. So you ready for our panel? I think it's going to be so good. The Boys and Men of Color one. I think it's going to be so good.